Hi folks, this is Tom Skowronek, your online instructor for ENG 103 Section WB. Given that we're going to be entering Module 2 today, which you'll find is open right now, it's a little bit more of an extensive module. I wanted to offer a kind of more in-depth tour of how everything's going to work. The first module was really for you to kind of get used to stuff, with a couple of assignments thrown in there. This module and the modules that follow, they're all going to end with the more formal writing assignments. So here's our home page. Hopefully we're all familiar with that. And what you'll see, just to show you from your end, you're going to see, first and foremost, the announcement section. I'll post relatively important stuff there throughout the course of the semester. Reminders of a lot of things that you already will know through working your way through the modules. You can check them here in what's new as well, and you can see the first two that we've already had. This video will be posted there as well. What you're going to also see is a to-do section. But the dates due for the major assignments I've been putting in the calendar. They should start popping up here as the formal assignments come closer. But if you check out the calendar, and this is only, once again, for formal essays, the 4 that you saw in the syllabus, and in the learning activities that make up a relatively large portion of the grade, you'll see the formal essays there. The rest of the stuff, discussion boards, readings, all that is considered classwork and classroom discussion. That must be done within the time frame of the module that you'll see at the beginning of the module, and you can also see in learning activities. Go back to the home page. So as those dates creep up, you should see that here. If there's any issues, I'll make sure that I correct those. Course information. Hopefully you've gone through all of this stuff, particularly the schedule of modules. General schedule of how the modules are going to work, week by week, and it gives you an overview of the sort of content within each module. The syllabus 2 has a write-up of all the major assignments and how you're going to be graded. So make sure you've checked that stuff out. Let's look at the content, and as you can see now, Module 2 is open. This is going to focus on the writing process, and it's also going to end and culminate in the submission of your first major formal essay. Hopefully you're finishing this up. I'll leave it open for an extra day probably, since we're all kind of getting used to it. Looks like a lot of you have started to work your way through it and have completed most of the assignments, which is good. You can see from this basically how a typical module is going to work. This is a much shorter one because it was only supposed to last 1 week. Really, how the table of contents is going to work is through a series of folders. Those folders are going to include all readings, all presentations, all submissions, discussion boards, and eventually the assignments. Essentially, what you have to do when you enter a module is work your way through all of the material. You should click on all of this stuff, do all the required reading, and when you get to a point where you're asked to do a response, you will be launched to one of our discussion threads, which you've been doing. Get used to that, though. We'll go back to content. With the freshly opened Module 2, here's what you'll see. A little bit more extensive, because this is going to last really for the next 3 weeks. It's going to be open for the next 3 weeks. It's going to involve a series of exercises, readings, presentations, and it's going to end with the submission of your first essay. So really, you can work at your own pace. That's how this online environment is meant to work. So you would start right away with the writing process. You'll get an overview. Always remember to ask a question. And we'll start with this process of some videos, readings from the text, readings that I'll provide links to. This first section will be all about the writing process. It'll include an exercise here where you're going to submit a brainstorming sample. And that will move into the narrative, which is our first essay. This is what you'll probably spend most of your time on throughout the next couple of weeks. What you'll have is the assignment. That's a write-up that I've provided you of everything that I'm looking for. Make sure to ask questions if you're unsure of what the assignment is asking of you, but it should be pretty well explained. I provided some sample essays. These are essays that you need to read. These are essays that are going to use as models for your own writing. Underneath that, once again, what you're doing is you're just kind of working your way through all of these different points within the module. After those sample essays, you'll see another discussion board. Always participate in the discussion boards. It's worth 10% of your grade. You'll see 2 of them here, one for a response to the reading, one for a descriptive writing sample, and you'll see some more sample reading. It's totally up to you in the independent online environment to keep up with that stuff. The final section is going to be constructing the narrative. This is where you're going to eventually compile the first essay. We'll talk about introductions. I'll give you some information on introductions. We'll move into some reading. I'm going to want you to do an outline, and then I'm going to want you to submit 2 versions of this draft. One is going to be rough. You'll submit this here. I want you to submit it within about a week of the final due date. I'll send out an announcement of that. With 1 week left before the due date arrives, what's going to happen is you'll eventually have to revise someone else's essay according to a set of criteria. This will all be explained as the module progresses. And it ends with your submission of a formal essay. You should include what I'll say is your brainstorm, your outline, and then also your final copy. Keep in mind that this stuff will be checked through SafeAssign, which checks for plagiarism and things like that. And always at the end of the module, you'll have the Ask a Question option. But really, you can work at your own pace, watch all the content, read all the content, and submit to all the discussion boards for full credit. The majority of your grade will obviously be calculated through the major essays. The gradebook information is in your syllabus. You can see that there at any time. But you should also be able to see the Grade Center here. If you click down there and you click on Full Grade Center, you'll see, from my vantage point, everybody's. But you should be able to see how the gradebook's going to be constructed in this module, which is the narrative, and then eventually the other final draft. When you look through it on your end, you should see all of the required submissions that are available to you in the syllabus. And let's just look to that one more time, just to make sure we're all on the same page here. As we scroll through the syllabus, here's how you're going to be graded. We've got 3 formal essays. The first one comes up at the end of this module. It's the narrative. We've got the research paper. We'll eventually do a video presentation. The workshops, which are going to be the brainstorming, outlining type stuff, and then your discussion boards and participation and logging in is worth another 10%. Always at the end of those major modules, you'll see one of those major submissions, and that's how you'll be graded, and that's how it'll all be calculated at the end of the course. So make sure that you start to run through all this content. If you haven't finished Module 1, do that. Run through all the content here. All right? Make sure you're watching all the content. Make sure you're viewing the PowerPoints, reading the material. You're going to need all that in order to eventually submit our final drafts, which is going to make up, once again, the majority of your grade. So Module 2 is open now. Get to it. And if you have any questions, always use this Ask a Question module. A lot of you have been using it already. That's great. Keep it going, right? It's like raising your hand in class. It's the only way I can know whether or not we need more clarity on something. So don't worry about using it. Feel free to use it as often as you want. I'll be posting videos like this pretty regularly just to give you sort of a more visual set of guidelines, particularly when we get into this rough draft, final draft stuff. I think I'll have to show you that. But you'll see this continually in our announcement section. So once again, any questions, always get in touch with me here, ask a question, email. You can even come see me in my office if you want. That's totally up to you. Good luck with Module 2, and we'll be in touch.